Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make my thin and crispy guava hamsah cookies. Why hamsah? Well, because I'm going to be using a hamsah cookie cutter, but of course you can use whatever shape you'd like. But as a Sephardic Turkish woman, how could I not make them into hamsah shape? It's perfect. So the best part about these cookies isn't really its shape, it is its flavor. They are so good. They are thin and crispy, perfect for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And when you want something sweet without overindulging, because they're really quite thin, so you can have a couple of these without feeling too guilty. They are really, really good. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For today's recipe, you will need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 stick or 8 tablespoons of butter that is room temperature, a 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 large egg that is also room temperature, 1/2 teaspoon of guava extract, which you can substitute with pure vanilla extract, but I love that extra little guava taste that the guava extract provides. And finally, 8 ounces of guava paste. You will also need a rolling pin, some plastic wrap, some parchment paper, a large and medium-sized bowl, a dough whisk or a large fork, a silicone or rubber spatula, some measuring spoons, a small bowl for the guava and another small bowl and a fork for the egg, a knife, some dry measuring cups, some oven mitts, a cooling rack, a handheld mixer, your favorite cookie cutter, and at least 1 small baking sheet. You can use up to 5 small baking sheets because we are going to cook these cookies in small batches, but of course you can just wait for your cooking sheet to cool and then reuse the same sheet. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is measure out your flour and add it to your medium-sized bowl. Once your flour is in, measure out your baking soda and sprinkle it right on top of your flour. Now, measure out your salt and do the same. Just sprinkle it right on top. Now grab your dough whisk or a large fork and then combine your dry ingredients well. You just want to make sure you distribute that salt and that baking soda well amongst the flour. Now set this bowl aside for now and grab your large bowl, and to it add your room temperature butter. Now measure out your sugar and sprinkle it right on top of the butter. So now grab your handheld mixer and use it to combine your butter and sugar. Keep your mixer on low, and it shouldn't take more than a minute or 2 to have these 2 ingredients combine. You are going to end up with a shaggy, fluffy looking mixture. Once the ingredients have come together, I slightly raise the speed of my mixer very gently while still in the bowl, and that way it'll release all that yummy butter and sugar. Now bring over your bowl with your egg and your fork and crack the egg into the bowl, and then just give it a little beating with the fork. Once you've beaten it ever so slightly, then just add it to this butter and sugar mixture. Now, here's where you'll measure out and add your guava extract. I order my guava extract online, and I recognize it's not very easy to find at your regular grocery store. So if you prefer to use pure vanilla extract, that's also fine, and your thin and crispy guava hamsah cookies will still be absolutely delicious. But of course, adding the guava extract just gives it that extra little fruity kick. Now, grab your handheld mixer once again and use it to incorporate these ingredients. We just want to bring them together, so it shouldn't take more than a minute or so. Just beat them together until they're well combined. Now, once these ingredients have come together, it's time to work on your guava paste. So use a knife to separate an 8-ounce portion of guava paste and add it to a microwave-safe bowl. You're going to want to melt this guava in the microwave, and that should take about a minute to a minute and a half. So you can start with a minute and then stir it with a spoon to see if it's melted. If not, then of course, add another 30 seconds. Be very careful because there's a lot of sugar in guava paste, so it will definitely burn you if you touch it. So very carefully, using a spoon, you're going to mix your guava and make sure that there are no chunks. You're going to use the back of the spoon and just give it a really good stir and make sure that it is nice and silky. Of course, you want your guava to cool a bit before you add it to the mixture because you don't want to be adding something really hot to a mixture that has eggs in it, because the last thing we want is to scramble our eggs. So instead, we are going to wait a few minutes, and the stirring helps cool the guava down. You see what it's supposed to look like? It's just supposed to be nice and silky. Then mix it very, very well until it starts to cool. Once it starts to cool, you're going to notice it'll thicken up just a bit, and that's perfect. That's what you're looking for. You don't want it too hot when you're going to add it in. So use your handheld mixer and give your mix just a little stir, and then add your guava to this mixture. Use your spatula to help you get all that delicious guava goodness, because as the guava has cooled a bit, we'll want to stick to your spoon and your bowl. So just use your spatula to help you get all that guava goodness into the mix. So now that all of your delicious guava is in, turn on your handheld mixer once again, and then incorporate the guava into the mixture. This process shouldn't take more than a minute or two, and you're always going to be on either a low or a medium speed, no more than that, and it really comes together really quickly. Now, of course, as you're mixing, if you notice that the mixture is clinging to the sides of the bowl, then use your spatula to bring the mixture in so that you're sure to incorporate all of those delicious ingredients. Now, once your guava has been well incorporated, it's time to combine our wet and dry ingredients. So bring over the bowl where you have your dry ingredients and give it one more little stir just to make sure everything is well combined. And then we are going to be adding these dry ingredients to our wet mixture little by little. So I usually like to split it up into 2 or 3 portions. So just bring your bowl over and sprinkle in about 1/3 of your mixture, and then put your mixer on low and start to bring the ingredients together. You are going to continue this process to add all of the dry ingredients into your wet, and you're going to notice that they start to become a cohesive mixture. You continue to mix until you incorporate the white flour, and when you can no longer see that flour, or when most of it has been combined, then it's time to add some more. So then do another 1/3 and then continue the same process. Just put your mixer on low and then bring the ingredients together until the flour is combined with the rest of the ingredients. And then of course, you're going to repeat the process a 3rd time until you've incorporated all of your flour into the mixture. Remember to use your spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl anytime you feel that your mixture is clinging, to make sure to incorporate every last bit. Now, once you add that 3rd portion of flour into your mixture, you are going to notice that the mixture becomes a lot thicker, and it may stick to the blades of your mixer. So you may have to raise your speed just a bit. But be careful, because you don't want your dough flying all over the place. Of course, once the ingredients look like they've been well combined and everything is well incorporated, then very carefully lift your mixer and then let the dough release itself from the blades. Now, once again, use your spatula to bring down the sides of your mixture from the bowl and make sure all of those dry ingredients get incorporated. You can finish this off with your spatula because at this point, most of your ingredients have already been well combined. So just scrape the sides of your bowl and then use your spatula to make sure to bring every bit together. At this point, your dough should have the consistency of clay or Play-Doh. This is what the dough should look like when it's ready. It keeps together, it forms into a ball, and it's just perfect for making these delicious thin and crispy guava hamsah cookies. So now, grab your plastic wrap and cut a piece that is large enough to cover your dough ball well. We are going to want to place our dough ball in the refrigerator to set. So you want to make sure that it's nicely covered because you do not want this beautiful dough to dry out. You're going to want to remove the dough ball from the bowl and place it directly onto the plastic wrap. And then just use your hands to make sure you form it into a ball that's pretty smooth, and then use the plastic wrap to cover the ball well. And then you are going to place it in your refrigerator and set a 45-minute timer because we want to let this dough really come together and we want it nice and cold for when it's time to work on it. So once the 45 minutes have passed, grab one of your cooking sheets and some parchment paper and measure it so that the parchment paper is about the size of your cooking sheet because we are going to be shaping these thin and crispy guava hamsah cookies right on the parchment paper. And then cut another sheet about the same size because when we roll our dough out, we are going to do it between 2 sheets of parchment. Now, grab your dough and bring it out of the refrigerator and open it up. What we want to do is portion this dough into 4 pieces because we are going to be baking 4 to 5 small trays of thin and crispy guava hamsah cookies. Why so many trays instead of using a few large trays? Because I find that when you use a large tray, some of the cookies are going to be near the sides and the back of the oven, and those cookies will brown quicker than the ones in the center of a tray. But when you use a small tray and place it in a center rack of the oven, all of the cookies will cook equally and they will all have the same beautiful golden brown color. So cut your dough into 4 parts. What works for me is that I cut once going one way, and then of course I make another cut in the opposite direction. Now, remove one of these portions of dough and leave it out as that is the portion we are going to work on first. I like to wrap the other 3 portions and just place them back in the refrigerator as I'm working on my first portion. This way they will remain nice and cold for when I am ready to work on my next piece. Now, before you start rolling out your first piece, make sure you preheat your oven to 350 degrees and make sure you have a rack placed in the center of the oven. Then grab your dough and just kind of form it into a ball with your hands. What we're going to do is we're going to roll this dough out. So you want to make it nice and flat. So you can use the palm of your hand and just use the heel to press your dough down because any method you prefer will work to roll this dough out. What I do is I use 2 sheets of parchment and I use a rolling pin and a combination of my hand, the heel of my hand, and just press my dough down because what we're looking to do is get this dough really thin. So you can use whatever method you want. I'm actually going to show you 2 ways because I do it with a large piece of dough, and I will also show you what to do when you want to use small pieces of dough to fill in any empty spots on your parchment before putting your tray into the oven to bake. Of course, the amount of cookies you're going to get on each tray is going to vary depending on the size and shape of your cookie cutter. You want to roll this dough out really well. Just turn your paper as you go and just make sure you're spreading that dough out really, really far, because what we're looking for is a thin and crispy cookie. So the further you can get your dough to spread, the thinner and crispier your cookie will be. So like I said, you can use your hands, you can use the heel of your hand, your fist, your palm, your rolling pin, whatever method you prefer, but just make sure you get that dough nice and thin and spread it out really, really well. Now, once you've rolled out your dough real thin, it's ready for you to cut your cookies. So grab your cookie cutter and peel off that first layer of parchment and expose the dough. Then use your cookie cutter to go around and cut as many cookies as you are able to with the cookie cutter. Don't worry too much about spacing, because these cookies don't grow very much at all in the oven, because they are thin and crispy after all, and so they stay almost true to size. So you really don't have to worry about leaving a lot of space in between your cookies. And since we're using a small tray to bake them, they will all bake nice and evenly in the center of your oven. So once you've cut out as many cookies as you are able to, then what you want to do is you want to remove the excess dough from around your cookies. So very gently just peel off the excess dough. And we are going to be using this same sheet of parchment to bake our cookies on. So we don't want to move our cookies, because we want them to retain their beautiful shape. And that's why we're going to bake them right on this same sheet of parchment. So as I was saying earlier, you still have plenty of room on the parchment, and of course you have plenty of dough. So then just take a small ball of dough and then flatten it out the same way you had done earlier with either your hand or your rolling pin, and then cut more cookies. Just place balls of dough as you go around on your parchment and shape as many cookies as you can to fit them onto your parchment paper. If you prefer this method, then you can do this from the beginning. You can just use small balls of dough, roll them, flatten them, and cut each cookie individually. You can use whatever method you prefer. With the size cookie cutter that I am using, I get 60 cookies out of this batch of dough. So on average, I want to get about a dozen cookies per sheet, because that way I will bake 5 sheets of cookies. Just repeat this process over and over until you're able to fit as many cookies as you possibly can onto your sheet of parchment. Now, if you filled your parchment and you have any dough remaining, just put it in the refrigerator and make sure you wrap it with the plastic wrap, and the pieces we have left over will form the dough that we will use for our 5th tray of cookies. Then grab one of your baking sheets and then gently just place it right under your parchment that is covered with your beautiful thin and crispy guava cookies, and then place them into the oven on a center rack so that you can bake your first tray. Set an 11-minute timer to allow your cookies to get beautifully golden brown. Now, after the 11 minutes have passed, pull out your cookies, and they are looking and smelling incredible. They are so fragrant. That guava scent is everywhere, and it is really just such a beautiful, thin, crispy cookie. But don't be tempted to take them off of the baking sheet just yet, because part of the way that we get these cookies nice and crispy is to leave them on that hot baking sheet for another 5 minutes before we remove them and put them onto a cooling rack. So at this point, I like to just set another 5-minute timer to let them finish. And then you can gently and carefully remove them from your baking tray and put them onto a cooling rack. I use an air bake type of tray, so my tray cools pretty quickly, but of course, you would want to use a spatula or wear an oven mitt for this step if your trays take longer to cool down. Now look at how beautiful these cookies look. They are perfectly thin, they are light and crispy, they retain their shape beautifully, and of course they've got that beautiful golden brown color. Really, this is just the perfect cookie. You are going to love it. Now, of course, once you remove all of your cookies from the baking sheet and place them onto your cooling rack, then continue to shape more cookies. You can use the time while your cookies are baking to work on your next batch and just repeat the same process. Just make sure you measure your parchment so that it's the size of your baking sheet, and then just shape your dough into a ball, place it onto your parchment, flatten it. Just repeat the same process that we had done previously. The idea is to go through all of the dough that you have in the refrigerator and to make it all into cookies. And another tip that I want to mention is that the size of your cookie cutter is important, because if you're using multiple shapes, you want all of your cookie cutters to be similar in size, because you don't want some of your cookies cooking faster than others. So it's okay to mix shapes, but just make sure that whatever cookie cutters you are using, they are similar in size. And of course, if your cookie cutter is a lot smaller than mine, then of course your cookies may cook a little quicker. So 11 minutes may be too long. You may need to take a minute off. And the same goes for if you're using a larger cookie cutter. You may want to add a minute to your bake. So of course, keep an eye on them when you're baking your first tray of cookies so that you can adjust the time accordingly if necessary. As each batch of my beautiful cookies cooled, I placed them into my serving bowl because I want to display them because they are so absolutely beautiful. And of course, that way I make room on my cooling rack for my next batch. But look at how beautiful these cookies look. They are incredibly inviting. And as I said earlier, they are thin and crispy. And so you can have a few of these without overindulging because they are really just light and perfect. And they are absolutely delicious for any occasion. So enough with the admiring of these absolutely spectacular looking and smelling cookies. It's time to try one. I can't wait. So let me grab this lovely one right on top. And it's just so light. It's just incredible. The texture is so great. It's just totally uniform throughout. And it's just light and crispy. Look at how thin that is. That's why it's important to roll them out real thin. And then they have just that beautiful snap. They're just perfect. Wow. This cookie is so good. It is just light and crispy. It's got that guava flavor running throughout. It's just so incredible and so different. It's like no other cookie you've ever tried. It's really something special. Everyone is going to ask you where you got these cookies because they're not going to believe that you made them yourself. They really feel like a professional cookie that you bought at a fancy bake shop. So good. And of course, if you've chosen to go with a hamsah shape, let's not forget how beautiful they look. And of course, that beautiful hamsah that is there for good luck and to ward off evil. What a perfect cookie. Now, these cookies need nothing else because they are really perfect as is, and that's how I prefer them. But it doesn't mean that you cannot decorate them. You can use royal icing on them. You can decorate them with a little bit of melted chocolate, white or dark. This one is with melted white chocolate and some fancy sprinkles on it. You can give these cookies whatever character you want because they are a beautiful and delicious canvas for you to get creative on. You can even make them into sandwich cookies. You can fill them with some white chocolate ganache, some peanut butter, maybe even some guava jam. You can fill them with ice cream and make an ice cream sandwich out of them. They are really just incredible and they are delicious however you serve them. Just have fun. Make them your own. These are your cookies and you are going to love them. So how absolutely delicious do these cookies look? They are perfectly thin and they have that yummy guava running through them. They are just so delicious and they have just this tropical flavor that people are going to wonder, what exactly is that? They are really, really great. They're perfect with a cup of coffee or some tea or just by themselves as a little snack. And that Hamsah shape is really extra special. People are gonna love them. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And remember to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on a single amazing recipe that I have planned for you. See you next time. Sally, that girl in the kitchen.